Welcome back, mamas. Y'all, today we are going to talk about taking control of our thoughts, turning our negative thoughts into positive ones, how we do that, and getting you what you ultimately want, which is a peace of mind, right? So let's get to it. Do you wish you had control of your days, that you had a rhythm, but instead feel overwhelmed, scattered, and like there's never enough time? You're in the right place. I'm Danielle, a recovering workaholic, wife, and stay-at-home mom of two girls. I've learned how to reclaim my time and find purpose and freedom so I can be present with my kids and feel like myself again. Here, we embrace where we are, but we don't stay there. So if you're ready to trade the chaos for clarity, the guilt for grace, and the endless to-do list for aligned flow, grab the kiddos a snack and toss in that laundry because I know you're multitasking, and let's do this because your time, your purpose, and you matter. Okay, mamas. So I know I talked on Tuesday and said this was a two-parter. So if you did not listen on Tuesday, go back and listen where we were linking discipline and peace and how those two things really do, I believe, go hand in hand together. And really something that requires or that is imperative, I guess, in order for you to have discipline is mastering your thoughts, right? Mastering what goes on in our minds and how this applies to us as moms, because I believe that when we become moms, there is this thing that happens to us where we somehow along the way, we kind of lose our identity. We kind of become a mom and we forget who we used to be before we were a mother. At least I know for me, that was definitely true. And I think it's moms who stay at home more often than moms who, still go to work because they still at least have like this life outside of their home, I believe. And so I believe all moms deal with this in some way, shape, or form. But I really believe that moms who stay at home, we really lose ourselves in motherhood and that we have to take our thoughts captive because a lot of times we can have a lot of negative thoughts. It's true of every and any person, whether you're mother or not, that 80 something percent, I think it's 82% of the thoughts that go through our head in a day are negative. That is a horrible statistic that I hope is not true for me. I think that's an average, so I hope I am not on that. But I know in the past, especially when I was, struggling and, felt really lost and like I didn't know why I was unhappy, this was something that was consuming me, right? This was something that I was dealing with these negative thoughts all day long. And I did not know how to take them captive. And so I want to start off with a quote from Napoleon Hill that says, "Self-discipline begins with the mastery of your thoughts. If you don't control what you think, you can't control what you do." If we don't control what we think, we can't control what we do. Okay, that's powerful. We are in control of our thoughts, right? And we are ultimately in control of what we do. But when we let our thoughts run, right? When we let this negativity in and when we like absorb it instead of catching it when we have a negative thought, which is what I believe I do now, but we learn how to catch that negative thought that we're having and reframe it. We learn how to think of those negative thoughts as just that, just thoughts, right? But that's not who we are. That is not who God says we are. That is not who you are, right? And so you catch yourself in the negative thought pattern and you completely shift it. If you don't control what you think, you can't control what you do, right? When we let our thoughts run wild, then a lot of times we find ourselves acting in a way that we don't want to be acting, right? We find ourselves doing things that aren't in alignment with what we believe about ourselves. They aren't in alignment with what we feel. They aren't in alignment with how we believe we should be acting or parenting or going about our days. And when we were talking on Tuesday, we were talking about peace, right? And having this peace of mind and having this peace and wanting presence with our children and present in any and every moment. And a lot of times we cannot be present in any moment when our thoughts are just running wild on us, when we haven't taken control of them. Right. And so that is super important to creating the peace that we want in our lives. And so, especially in this holiday season, when there's so much going on, there's all the parties, there's all the presents we have to buy, there's all of these extra things that we have to do that are on our plate. This particular season, kids, they're more excited, which a lot of times brings about more emotions and more tantrums, and just excitement brings about a heightened emotion, right? And so we have to be equipped to handle those emotions. And when we are just going and going and going and letting things run wild and letting our mind kind of run and our thoughts not, get the best of us, when we aren't taking control of our minds, when we aren't disciplined in that way, then we can get to a heightened emotional state ourselves and start behaving in a way that we don't want to behave. Right? I want to read another quote. This one is from Buddha, which says, to enjoy good health, to bring true happiness to one's family, to bring peace to all, one must first discipline and control one's own mind. To enjoy good health, to bring true happiness to one's family, to bring peace to all, we have to discipline and control our own mind, right? And I believe God plays a huge part in peace. Like, I believe bringing it to Him is the only way that I was able to, take those negative thoughts and turn them into positive. It was the only way where I could take His truth and what He says about me and to really solidify in that. Because when we don't do that, when we are not controlling our minds, when we are letting these negative thoughts and these different things control us, when we are not disciplined enough to, for me, I have to start in the Word every single day. I have to start in the Word every day. On the days when I don't, I know. On the days when I don't, everyone knows probably, right? Like, whether they say it or not, I'm sure they feel it, because I am different when I start with God as the center and what I am doing for the day. When I am rooted in that and who He says I am versus what my mind might be running with, then it is a whole different day. But when I'm not disciplined, then I'm not able to control my mind, right? As well as I am on other days. And there is a discipline to it. It's a discipline of catching it, right? But it's also the discipline of what keeps it there, right? Like, what keeps you knowing how to change that mindset? What keeps you in the truth? For me, it's rooting in God. Right. And I believe that a lot of people are like that. And then you can also, probably don't have the time right now to read all of the books and all of the other things, or listen to, all of these. Of course, you're listening to this podcast right now, which, thank you. Right. So hopefully that's helping. But listening to all the podcasts all day long and all of these things to keep you rooted there. But really, rooting in God is the thing that can keep me grounded. It's the thing that can keep my mind fresh and knowing how to combat these negative thoughts. And when I don't do it, then I feel it, right? So recognizing the thoughts is one of the most important parts. And a lot of times you can't recognize those thoughts when you aren't rooted, right? When you aren't rooted, because the thoughts just seem common. They seem regular. You aren't noticing that they aren't true, right? You aren't noticing that they're lies. You aren't necessarily even noticing that they're negative thoughts when you're not rooted in the actual truth, right? Is this making sense? I hope this is making sense, because it is so powerful once you recognize that a lot of the thoughts that you're having, they're the reason that you're unsettled. They're the reason that you aren't able to have peace, because you're continuously having these negative thoughts and you're not recognizing that they aren't true. You're believing them to be true, right? And so it's creating this overwhelm and this, feeling like you're not enough. And it's creating all of these things in your life that are perpetuating one another, right? It's like a circle, a spiral that you're getting stuck in that can be broken if you just root in that knowledge of who you actually are, of who God says that you are, so that you can combat the negative thoughts, take the discipline, right? Recognize it, then have the discipline to change those thoughts, right? But it takes the discipline of number one, rooting and taking the time to get into God's word. And number two, then putting that into practice, recognizing the thought and then changing the thought pattern. I used to have to take the thoughts and actually write them down because I would still believe them until I wrote them down. And once I wrote them down, then I was able to look at it and say, okay, that's not true. Why would I believe that? It is not true. When you look at it on paper, then you're able to look at it and say, why would I want to believe that? It's not true. It's not able to be proved. And so why would I want to believe that? And if you don't want to believe it, think about what is true or what the opposite of that could possibly be. And then think, okay, could that be true? And usually it's yeah, that could be true just as much as the other thing could be true. So why wouldn't I want to believe the thing that is a positive mindset versus believing the thing that was a negative mindset? Right? Because we can control what we think, right? We might not be able to control what comes into our brain, but once it's there, we control what we do with it and we can control our actions. And if our minds are filled with all this negativity, our actions are going to reflect that, right? And so I want you to be able to take control of those thoughts and change them into the thoughts that you're wanting to have. I have one last quote here I'm going to end with, and this is from Guru Gobind Singh that says, "Peace and happiness shall fill your mind deep within if you act according to truth and self-discipline." And I believe that's God's truth and self-discipline and what you believe to be true, right? Which is the most powerful thing. And so I would love to help you with figuring out what is important to you, what you think is the most important thing in your life right now and what is most important in your families, and to get you everything that you are wanting to have in your life. It starts, I believe, with God, and then we have to get you to a place where you feel like you're moving forward, right? Where you are getting to where you want to go, whatever that looks like for you. But figuring out what is important to you is where it starts. Once you have this foundational piece, you were able to do so many things and accomplish so much for yourself and for your family. I would love to help you with that. If you go to my website, prioritizewithpurpose.com, and click on the coaching, you can sign up for a prioritization clarity call with me where we will get you started. And if you need help with the, devotionals or figuring out how, we talked on Tuesday about planning, figuring that out or anything like that, I can help you with all of those things. But really what I want to do is start you on this journey and this roadmap to get you where you want to go, to discover what your true north is and to get you on a path towards it. Okay. So until next week, y'all, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, Mama. If so, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and then hit share and send this to a mom who needs this in her day. I'll meet you right back here next week. Keep smiling, y'all.